Welcome. Welcome, everyone. It's Angelo Robles. And for those of you live, well, this is live at 6 p.m. Eastern on the button on this Tuesday here in mid November. I have not done a live in a long time as a hyper brief update. Then we'll get to China's bet that America will defeat itself, kind of a geopolitical discussion that will actually go deeper than that. But briefly, as I noted, I wrapped up my New York City AI Family Office Masterclass. That was our best one, no doubt. We really got it down pat, and it was incredible for the families that are there. I also, as noted, had travels to Cayman where I participated in a two-person, I was one of the two, debate on geopolitics that leads a little bit, it was a little deeper than that, but that was a core part of it. That leads a little bit to my sequoia today. And I was part of, well, what a surprise, an AI session with three wonderful co-participants, all of us different perspectives and views. And the Cayman Islands was a wonderful, gracious host. So not too much of me other than some pre-recorded content, although pretty awesome. When I was down there, I did something on the Michael Burry trade relative to AI. So I hope you enjoyed it. But I haven't been live in a while, and we're heading up to the holiday here in the US. Next week is Thanksgiving. I have some travels this week. So I really have been building into this one, leading into it, into my discussion debate in the Cayman Islands, and wanted to do this discussion on China's bet that America will defeat itself. After this, happy to field any questions. I'll wrap up with some additional commentary, kind of what's ahead. But without further ado, shall we begin? So again, China's bet that America will defeat itself. This will be a broader discussion than what it sounds, I promise. America's strategic imperatives in a dangerous world. For a new in the audience, hello everyone, I'm Angelo Robles. And let me start with a fact that should focus every strategic mind tonight. China builds warships at a rate of what? 200 to 1 compared to the US. They manufacture more military drones in a single day than the US produces in an entire year. They've invested hundreds of billions into artificial intelligence designed, well, kind of for one purpose, strategic overmatch against the USA. Now, well, there still is good news. The US and the West, not to make it too bifurcating, but can still win this competition. And make no doubt about it, it is a Cold War. But we do have to stop pretending that the world works the way that we wish it did and start dealing with actually how the world really is. So I'd like to talk about a couple of different critical theaters, if I could use that word. The Pacific, where China is making and doing a great job, its bid for dominance. Europe, where I guess our wealthiest allies, quote unquote, I could argue, freeloading on America's security while empowering our adversaries, and our own hemisphere, broadly here in North America and Latin America, where China is buying influence while we're asleep at the wheel. This is real competition, global competition. And right now, I feel in aspects of it, maybe outside of AI, that we're playing like it's 1995, but it's not. So I think we have to wake up to a sobering reality. The China challenge is by far way more than back in the Soviet Union, the USSR, a competitor to the US and the West. Kind of really scale meets ambition. So let's be clear about the Chinese advantages, and they are there because you can't counter what you won't acknowledge. They have systematically built the world's, by far, largest manufacturing base. They control, what, 50% of global steel production, 97% of rare earth processing, that's the key word, and the vast majority of global electronics manufacturing, as well as many others, pharmaceutical, I could go on and on. They've translated that industrial capacity absolutely into military production at a scale that we really haven't seen since World War II. What did I note? Their shipbuilding capacity, actually, it's like 232 times larger than ours, meaning the US. As noted, their drone production is measured thousands per day, while ours is measured in like hundreds per year. They're integrating AI into weapon systems, surveillance networks, and command structures faster than, than we're holding bureaucratic meetings about it. Now, they also have, the so-called 100-year plan, strategic patience. They absolutely think, I was going to say in decades, maybe centuries. And they're executing really a comprehensive strategy to displace American power if they haven't displaced a good part of it now, probably not by 2050, by like 5 years, 2030. But here's what they don't have: American innovation, American capital markets, American alliances, American geography, or a fundamental dynamic of a truly free, quote unquote, we do have socialism, but let's go with truly free society. China's advantages are impressive, but perhaps not insurmountable. They're vulnerable to demographic collapse. Their population is aging faster than any significant society in history. Their economy is debt-laden and somewhat fragile. Their innovation, well, I could argue it's partially stolen, not really created, and surrounded by neighbors who maybe fear them more than direct alliances. I could argue Japan, India, Vietnam, South Korea, the Philippines, etc. We have certain advantages, but one that we do not have is really a national focus. China has absolute clarity, a unifying morality, a culture. It's very important. Clarity of purpose. We have diversity statements, bureaucratic paralysis that can change actually for us to win. And you do need to look at this that way. I would argue we must change. Now, on the AI battlefield, AI will determine really at the end of the day who dominates this century by far, more than any other technology. China, I think we do too, but China definitely understands this. They're investing massively. Look at their manufacturing, their energy production, nuclear power plants. They're integrating AI into military command and control, autonomous weapons, cyber operations, definitely intelligence analysis. They're building systems that can process information and make decisions at speed that, rather bluntly, like no human could match. And they're not burdened by our system, by our debates about algorithmic fairness or AI ethics, important subjects, but they just don't have those constraints. Their priority is singular: build AI that simply gives them a massive economic and, make no doubt about it, military advantage. Now, do we have certain edges in IP, intellectual property, relative to AI? Sure. Kind of invented the technology. Our companies are still more innovative and more significant on a global scale. Our research institutions are still more advanced. Our tech sector, for all its flaws, and they are there, is still the most dynamic on earth. But we're squandering an advantage, it feels like every day. Regulatory uncertainty, adversarial relationships between government and industry, and with the insane practice of training Chinese AI researchers at American universities that then take that knowledge back to Beijing. We need to treat AI the way that we treated the space race that goes back a long time ago, as a national priority that requires government investment, industry partnership, and an absolute protection of intellectual property. The good news, we're still ahead. The bad news, our lead is shrinking every day, and they dominate in manufacturing and energy. And here's the big one I hinted at earlier: that unifying morality, that culture, that's not here in America or really the West anymore. The semiconductor choke point. Everything we've discussed, AI, weapon systems, manufacturing, depends on advanced semiconductors. And 90% of the most advanced chips, come from one company in one location. No surprise. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, to be exact. 100 miles from mainland China? China has explicitly stated that Taiwan will be reunified with the mainland. Maybe no timeline, though. They're building, they easily have the capability to invade. That's beyond the question. Will they? They conduct military exercises, assimilating even the operations. If China takes Taiwan, which they've studied extensively, they control the semiconductor supply that really powers modern civilization. They would cut off access to the chips, the building of the chips that run everything from effectively our weapon systems to our power grid. And look at their stranglehold on rare earth processing. So this is perhaps our most critical strategic vulnerability. We're not helpless. We're already rebuilding to some degree domestic semiconductor production. We need to accelerate it dramatically more fabs, more research, more greater supply chain redundancy. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. And we need to make it crystal clear to Beijing, any move on Taiwan, well, that's going to mean direct military confrontation with the US. It can't be strategically ambiguity, unclear. No diplomatic flexibility, that's war. Because a world where China controls advanced semiconductors is a world, effectively, and they know this, where China really will control everything else. Let's take our attention a little bit away from there and go to the European problem. Boy, you could see I was a big hit in the Cayman Islands. Let's talk a little bit about Europe, because we need to be honest about what our European allies have become. To some degree, wealthy, comfortable, but to a large degree, militarily, kind of anemic and dependent on America for their security while lecturing us about how we use our power. And speaking of unified culture, well, they're probably worse shaped than us, but maybe a subject for a different time. Germany built its entire economic model on what? Cheap Russian energy, and then expressed shock when Putin used that dependency as strategic leverage. They what? Then shut down nuclear power plants, blocked defense spending increases, and made themselves vulnerable, all while maintaining fourth largest economy on earth. France still has a strategic vision, at least in rhetoric. The UK remains a capable partner, but NATO as a whole has become a protection arrangement where what? America pays for 70% of the bills. I know the Europeans aren't going to like to hear this, and I love to go to Europe. You're so awesome to me and so many great things that I love. But I'm speaking from my perspective, the truth. Now, back to what? America pays 70% of the bills, while many members don't even meet the minimal, 2% of GDP defense spending target. And while European capitals debate carbon targets and refugee policy, China is systematically buying European infrastructure, ports in Greece, telecom networks in Italy, industrial companies in Germany. They're not even just investing, that's strategic leverage. Europe absolutely matters. The transatlantic alliance matters, but it needs to be, how about an actual alliance? Not really American charity, while European, often ingratitude. So here's what I think. Who am I? But needs to happen. Europe needs to take its own defense seriously. They need to get their handle on their unifying morality and culture. They also need to understand the defense spending that I mentioned earlier, the energy independence, and that means understanding that Russia is 100 miles away from NATO's eastern border, not 5,000 miles away like it is for us. We should support European security, sure, but Europeans need to lead it. Now, here's the strategic reality. Every dollar and every deployment we have in Europe to compensate for their underinvestment is a dollar and a deployment that we don't have in, say, the Pacific, where the main event, as I mentioned earlier, is happening. China is watching, of course, Europe's weakness. They're taking notes. They're betting that if they move on Taiwan, well, Europe's not going to do anything because they really can't do anything. We need European partners who can actually fight, not dependents who need protection. And their AI policy is completely ridiculous. They're not even really players in the race. That said, there's certain pockets of incredible entrepreneurs there, and kudos to them. I don't know how they do it. Our hemisphere, here in the US, North America, broadly LATAM, kind of two fronts of a Chinese strategy. China isn't just competing with us in the Pacific and Europe. They're kind of in our own hemisphere, using different strategies in different places, sure, but with the same goal. if nothing else, displace American influence. We could briefly go into Mexico, caught between two powers. Let's start with our immediate neighbor because Mexico's dilemma reveals kind of China's sophistication. The Mexican trade deficit with China hit, I think, 120 billion last year. Under pressure from DC, Mexico's government is trying to impose tariffs on Chinese imports, but Mexican businesses are pushing back. Why? Why? Because they literally cannot source electronics and auto parts anywhere else. It's a tough one. So think about what that means with our USMCA partner sharing what a 2,000-mile border with us has become so dependent on Chinese manufacturing that they can't comply with our request without effectively crippling their own industries. It is a tough spot. China, Mexico container volumes jumped, I think it was about 60% in about a year ago. And Chinese companies are, they're setting up some manufacturing in, Mexico. Not really to serve the American market, but to access ours tariff-free through, again, USMCA. We're watching in real time as China uses Mexico as kind of a backdoor to circumvent effectively our own trade restrictions. And it took direct kind of Trump and Xi, the negotiations, and an FBI director flying to Beijing the first time in over a decade to get China to stop shipping fentanyl precursor chemicals through Mexico that are obviously killing Americans by the tens of thousands. Now, perhaps you could say Mexico didn't choose to be the battleground or a battleground between the US and China's economic systems, but that's kind of what they've become. And every day, they're becoming economically more integrated with China. There could be a point when we simply lose strategic leverage with, and for many reasons, our most important neighbor. Let's broadly take a little bit of a look at Latin America. And yes, these are the kind of things that family office leaders and organizations need to be thinking about, speaking about, and throwing discussions on the table. Right or wrong, you need to forget being in an echo chamber. You need to have honest discussions and then adapt your strategy and your portfolio around this. Back to Latin America, the southern vacuum. Now look further south, because while Mexico is caught in the middle, the rest of Latin America is being systematically acquired. Belt and Road initiatives from Ecuador to Argentina, Chinese-built ports in Peru and Brazil, telecommunications infrastructure throughout Central America, mining concessions, debt leverage. And here's where, it kind of gets real. Right now, the last couple of days, we have the USS Gerald Ford, the world's largest aircraft carrier in the Caribbean, with 15,000 service members. Venezuela is mobilizing, they say, hundreds of thousands of troops in response. The Pentagon just designated this operation as, I remember, Southern Spear. Well, why? Why? Because Venezuela has effectively become like a state, a client state with Chinese backing. Because Nicaragua is building Chinese infrastructure, because Argentina is joining BRICS, because we ignored our own hemisphere, our bad, for decades. And China filled the vacuum. We could go on a little bit to Africa, where something similar, although not quite in our backyard, is also happening. We are losing a lot of this quote unquote Cold War. The Monroe Doctrine used to mean something. Now we're deploying aircraft carriers in the Caribbean, kind of because Chinese military and intelligence presence is embedded 2,000 miles from Texas. There is a pattern. Here's what China figured out. You don't really need to invade the Western Hemisphere. As my title noted, you just kind of need to offer what Americans won't. To Mexico, manufacturing capacity and supply chains without political conditions. Broadly, Latin America, infrastructure investment without governance lectures. And maybe to both, partnership or partnerships that that's transactional, immoral, and don't come with democracy, I guess I could state that, requirements or environmental impact statements. And again, maybe I'm being too negative. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell me otherwise. I get caught in echo chambers. I'm imperfect. But it seems in the long term, and I think that long term is coming up on us sooner than we would like, that what they're doing is kind of working. Like we're the neutral partner for this entire hemisphere. Geographic proximity, sure. Shared democratic traditions in most countries, cultural ties, economic kind of somewhat or has been complementary. But we have treated LATAM like an afterthought, in Mexico to some degree like a problem to be managed rather than a partner, even with the grave challenges there to be invested in. We need, well, to some degree, two different strategies, but I believe, again, my perspective, they need to be coordinated. I could state in Mexico, massive investment into reshoring, critical supply chains broadly in North America, make it economically attractive for Mexican manufacturers to source from US and Canada instead of China. Energy partnerships for sure, semiconductor production 100%, battery manufacturing. Like turn this USMCA into an actual economic fortress. For Latin America, broadly, infrastructure investment that kind of competes with Belt and Road, trade agreements, energy partnerships. Again, I'm an AI guy. You're going to see me coming back to that. Kind of you win that, you kind of win this. Economic, but that would be too short of a discussion. I need something to fill half an hour. Economic integration that creates shared prosperity, not aid per se with conditions, but actual partnerships. Now, if China, as the decade progresses and time moves on, dominates our hemisphere, both north and south, they have a strategic presence effectively at our doorstep and control of critical resources, ports that can host their vessels, if we allow that, and the ability to threaten us from multiple directions while they challenge us as well in the Pacific, their backyard. The fact that we're deploying aircraft carriers to the Caribbean for a variety of reasons in 2025 tells you how badly kind of we let this, I could argue, deteriorate. That can't stand anymore. Now, there are some other advantages, admittingly, that America, the USA, does have. So that's why there may be some sign to being optimistic. Again, our capital markets, what used to be our culture and unifying morality, that maybe, just maybe, we could still get back. Oh, there's other advantages as well. A little one called we are kind of, it's been weakening, but we're still got it, the world reserve currency. As I mentioned, we have the deepest capital markets. We have innovative companies. We have Silicon Valley. We have debatable, but the best universities, kind of secure borders, at least now, at least we choose to secure them. And we do kind of have energy independence when we choose to exploit it. We have, 50 treaty allies. China has North Korea and a transactional relationship with Russia. That's really not an alliance structure. That's more strategic isolation. We do have military reach that China, this is debatable from people I talk to some degree can't match. But we each have nuclear. Does it really matter? We have combat experience to a degree that their military lacks. We have a professional, all volunteer force. They have a conscript, I guess you could call it, military that really hasn't fought in a war since 1979. But do not underestimate them in any way. Our geography here in the US is a fortress. Oceans on two sides, friendly, they used to be, friendly neighbors to the north and south, and China somewhat surrounded by rivals. We innovate, they sometimes steal, though they're getting better at that. We create, you could argue they copy. When the pressure comes, when it really matters, free societies generate solutions that Authoritative states cannot, or so we're led to believe. Our economic system, for all its flaws, allocates capital more efficiently than any centrally planned economy ever has or ever will. But, and this is critical, these advantages only matter if we use them. So, is there somewhat of a path forward? Is there somewhat strategic clarity? Well, maybe here's what victory can look like. First, industrial policy. We need to rebuild where it matters, important American manufacturing. Not all of it, but critical parts. Shipbuilding, semiconductors, advanced materials, defense production, tax incentives, regulatory reform, strategic investment, like whatever it takes. We absolutely do need energy dominance, unleash America's energy production across every source, natural gas, nuclear, advanced technologies. Eventually, AI will solve for fusion energy. Power the factories, power the economy, export to allies so they're not dependent as much on Russia and other suppliers. And our military, although I gave it a little bit of a shout there, it needs to be modernized. We could debate, I was going to say more ships, sure, more submarines, yes. We need way more autonomous systems and drones, AI enabled command and control, and the industrial base, which we kind of don't have now to sustain it. Again, what did I say? China's building somewhat 200 to 1 relative to ships. Like maybe get up to build 50 to 1 and make each ship, if I could use that word, more capable. Close the gap through quantity, but also quality. We absolutely need semiconductor security, accelerate radically domestic production, deepen partnerships with Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan, and establish an absolute red line that Taiwan's independence is non-negotiable. Someone had a funny comment. No, I would get like one vote if I ever ran for anything. Trust me, brother, but thank you. Fifth, AI supremacy, government investment, industry partnership, protection of intellectual property, and an end to training our adversary scientists really in American universities. And on the one hemisphere strategy, as I hinted at pretty strongly, a more comprehensive, eloquent plan for Mexico and Latin America. Economic engagement, infrastructure investment, security partnerships make China's presence expensive and America's partnerships more attractive. We do need kind of our alliances overhaul. Europe pays for Europe's defenses. We focus more so on the Pacific. NATO remains strong, but only if NATO members meet their obligations. And in Europe, they have that potential. They can do it. It's not over. In my closing, kind of a little bit of a hard truth, I'll leave you with this. China is not the 1960s, 70s, and 80s Soviet Union. This is like not a failed economy propped up by ideology. This is a dynamic, authoritative state with massive industrial capacity, strategic patience, and a 5,000-year civil kind of memory, I guess I would add. They really think in generations. They've studied American failure from Vietnam to Afghanistan. And they're betting that our political dysfunction, societal rot, cultural fragmentation, declining institutional trust will do their work for them. And they very well may end up being correct. So what keeps me and billionaires and family offices up at night? Sadly, it's many things. So China's advantages are external. Maybe ours are more internal and we're squandering them. They do not have to defeat us militarily. They just have to wait, as my title noted, for us to defeat ourselves through political paralysis, infighting, through universities that teach our students to hate our own civilization, through a ruling class more interested in status competitions than strategic competition, through a culture that's forgotten how to build things. You want to know why China thinks they can win? And they have every reason to feel that way. Look at our cities. Look at our schools. Look at how long it takes to build anything in America versus how long it takes to build something in Shanghai. Look at our discourse. We can't even agree on basic facts, let alone a grand strategy with a unifying leader that all of us may not be realistic, but in my mind could rally around. So the advantages I laid out tonight, and they are not bad for America. I get it. Capital markets, alliances, innovation, geography, they are real for sure. But they're not self-executing. They require a society that still believes in itself, a political system that can make decisions, a culture that rewards excellence over grievance. Do we still have that? Maybe not. The recent trade truce with Beijing, I mean, kind of what, a 1 year timeout where both sides suspend some restrictions. We've lowered tariffs. They delayed rare export controls. Analysts are calling it kind of what it is, Beijing buying time to build leverage. They get a breather for their somewhat struggling economy, and we get exactly what? Another year of pretending that the problem will solve itself. It's not. This is generational competition. Do we still have any bit of unifying morality, of culture, of pride, of the ability to think and work hard? This is competition, and we're treating it kind of like a quarterly earnings call. So here's what victory really actually requires. And I don't know if we have the stomach for it. Choosing strategic industries over ideology, purity, about free markets, for sure. Rebuilding, as I noted, manufacturing, even when it's going to be more expensive. It means telling Americans that some sacrifices, God forbid, are necessary, that maybe cheap consumer goods aren't worth strategic dependence. How about our universities producing engineers, not activists? It means a defense industrial base that can actually produce real modern weapons at scale. And an immigration policy, sure, that attracts the world's best talent while blocking technology transferring to Beijing. Is that hard? Well, apparently it certainly is. It means a political class that puts national interest above partisan advantages. And both the Democrats and Republicans are kind of both disgusting. Wake the hell up. It means a media, oh, there's lots to that one, right? That understands the stakes. It means citizens who grasp that freedom requires defense, that rights without responsibility is really just decadence with paperwork. Most of all, it means rediscovering the civilizational, kind of the confidence that built this country. Not arrogance, not being imperialistic, but the fundamental belief that free societies, properly defended, are worth preserving. And that American power, for all its flaws, and they are there, has been a net good for humanity. But do we, I know I do, but do we still believe that? Because Beijing is betting that we don't. This century, the past century was ours because we outproduced, out-innovated, outlasted, out-hustled the alternatives. We beat fascism and communism, not by being perfect, we're not, but by being better and having the clarity and conviction to see it through. Can we do it again? I don't know. Maybe generously, it's a coin flip. And that uncertainty, honesty, acknowledgement that this kind of could go either way should be, while we still have time, is what drives us. Again, China has its challenges, an aging population, a brittle economy to some degree, surrounded by rivals, but they absolutely, I'm so jealous of that unity of purpose. And again, understanding families and the work that I do, I think you're gravely underestimating that purpose, a unifying morality and culture. It's very important. America may have the structural advantages, but we're eating ourselves alive from the inside. This isn't about whether we can win, it's about whether we will win, whether we're serious, whether we're still capable. Sometimes I have my doubts of the sustained national effort that great power competition requires. And the evidence, me being generous, is probably mixed. So here's what I do know. Inevitably, decline is a choice, but so is renewal. Every institution, every person, those of you listening, you have a role. Industry leaders rebuild supply chains, educators produce capable citizens, political leaders govern for the country, stop governing for the news cycle. And maybe as citizens, we have to demand more, again, on both sides of our aisle. Because if we lose this competition, it won't really be because China was stronger. It'll be because we lacked the discipline, the unity, and the leadership, the will to deploy the advantages that we kind of already have. So this century is somewhat undecided, and the clock is ticking. China is waiting for us to get our they aren't waiting for us to get our act together. And we shouldn't be waiting either. I see there's a boy, a couple of comments. Sometimes I'm hated and or loved. I guess it's good to be a little bifurcating and not like, that guy's just okay. Either he sucks or let's get that guy into political office. You don't want me in political office. I don't think I would be a good politician. And no, I'm not an attorney. I've never even graduated from college. I grew up in an America where I felt, even coming from a broken home, a challenged background, a welfare mother, but who loved and cared for me, that I could do something. And I failed my fair share. I'm a relatively resilient son of a gun. And who knows, I could pass away tomorrow. But I've done things, I produce things. And I do take pride in that. I do like to share my perspective. I guess it's an opinion. I might be wrong. I get caught in echo chambers, and that's a terrible thing. We have to listen to the other sides. We have to be respectful to their words and what is causing them to feel that way, and do they have some points? So, in being someone who enjoys geopolitics and politics, and I know in the family office world, we're told, like, Angelo, like, don't talk about these things. So when I was the founder and longtime CEO of Family Office Association, I had investors, I had boards, I felt I had a burden of a company. Like, don't really speak your thoughts. Like, who are you? You're not an expert. I've done multiple programs on that word expert, so don't get me laughing on that. And I'm fortunate now. I'm at a certain stage in my life and career. I have an intimate organization where I don't need to answer to anyone. And I could research for my thesis and throw ideas on geopolitics, macroeconomics, investing, AI on the table. And I am wrong my fair share. And yes, like a good poker player, which I do enjoy, there's times you need to adapt. As new information comes in, you adapt your thinking. So I do enjoy speaking at conferences and programs. I think the only person in the family office world who actively looks for debates. I really do enjoy them. And sometimes I get my butt whipped just being fair, whether right or wrong from the perspective of and that's a little bit of a bad attitude for me to have. I'm not in it necessarily to win or to lose. I'm in it to share information and learn myself from someone who's intellectual, where maybe they have something to teach me, not to harden my ideas, although maybe a little bit, so I could think that I might be wrong. And I need to open up my perspective. So was I wrong about some of the things I noted tonight? Maybe. You all will certainly let me know. My members can and do let me know. And by the way, many of my members have a very different perspective than I do, but they appreciate that in a world that is so vanilla and so careful, and although I may be, I don't know, maybe offensive to some, I do speak my thoughts on a variety of different subjects. And I'd like to hope I come at it with a level of intellectual rigor, more importantly, curiosity, and some level of thinking and research that goes behind the words that I write or come out of my mouth, for lack of a better word. So I hope you enjoyed tonight. I know it's probably a little different than things you're used to hearing within the family office community. And I like philanthropy. I like structuring a family office, tax issues. Let's go on investments, like all those things I really enjoy and love too. And they're a big part of what we do. But when I look at the research and studies, and I've been in this community for decades, constantly now for 3 years running, geopolitics are number one. The world is in utter chaos. Chaos. And if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a family member, a wealth creator, how could you not need to understand local politics and the geopolitical landscape, understand the economy, the debt and deficit that we have here in the US, which this wasn't the conversation for that, and the big, beautiful bill adding to that. Now, there might be from AI a little bit of a way out of that, but not as much of a discussion for tonight. Some of you have heard me mention and talk about that before. So yeah, I mean, I get my sleep. I'm not worried like every night that I go to sleep, because I know that's very important. And it's not a good thing that you want to take to bed with you, or the relationships with your family and your loved ones. You do need to separate that. But I do feel a sense of a burden, a sense of someone who, as a leader in what I've built in the family offices that follow me, that I'm providing from my perspective content that I think is worthy, even if they disagree, it causes them to think. So if you're enjoying this kind of content that you're never going to hear at the vast majority of family office programs, they just don't want it. They won't allow it. They're afraid of debates. They're afraid it's something that could rock the status quo, or God forbid someone in the audience is offended, walks up and walks out. Oh, by the way, that happens to me. It's almost every program. What does that really say about you? Listen to what me or others have to say. Challenge us with a question. You don't have all the answers. What are you afraid of that someone else is speaking something different? And the same with me. So again, I'm Angelo Robles. I've been in the family office community. Some say forever, like, old man, you've been here for too long. I don't know. I love what I do. I'm obsessed by the family office community. If you like the idea of deeper thinking around these subjects and the impact on wealth creation, on preserving wealth, one of my programs is called Sovereign Risk and Disaster Preparedness. More coming up on that in 2026. You should join my private intelligence and strategy community for incredible entrepreneurs, family offices, investors, called SFO Continuity. You simply go to angelorobles.com. It's not hard. And yes, I'm active on social media. You could enjoy some of the free content if you do, on X, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, probably my most common platforms, and some others as well. Again, I have way more questions than I have answers. And I'm fortunate to know some incredible people, and being a part of the group and being part of a peer group, you meeting them, some of the most iconic families in the world, greatest investors. Some go back 7, 10, 11 generations. A lot of them are brand new, and they're doing it. They're the bumblebee that's not supposed to fly, but somehow it does. It overcomes the struggles. If you want to be a part of something like this, go to angelorobles.com and simply join, become a member. So in kind of wrapping up, I'll be in Florida a little bit in December. I'll have multiple digital programs as well, some exclusively for my members. I will be wrapping up what I discussed a couple of weeks ago, my how to create a top 1% family office, really built around first principles, and my sovereign risk and disaster preparedness. Those will be 2. For my members, get complete access. Others will be a fee if you want to be a part of a one-off of some of my programs in 2026. You bet you I will be back for the AI Family Office Masterclass. Right now, I'm just doing one-on-ones with that. So some of you have reached out. Hey, we want to keep what we're doing really private. Could you and a dream team come to us, whatever, offshore, in Florida, in Wyoming? I hope so, as I really want to go back again. And kind of teach it to us more immersed, specifically for us over 2 or even 3 or 4 days. It's all on the table. You just have to be a member and then reach out, and a conversation that we could have relative to something like that. So the remainder of this year is still going to be busy for me, especially intellectually, and 2026 is going to be incredible. And I just put up a little something on my angelorobles.com, My marquee event is going to be my family office forum, again in Palm Beach, the whole week, Monday through Friday. Then I'll be there 2 or 3 days pre and after that. So for me, probably 10, 11 days. But Monday through Friday, soirees, intimate programming, incredible speakers, really deep, non-politically correct discussions about so many different things. And I'm telling you, what's going on in AI is just like, I want to grab many of you by the lapel. We had one person attend the masterclass that went in skeptical and came out just floored. And they literally are changing everything because they need to. What's happening now, like, you're going to be so far behind if you don't get on top of this. It's going to sneak up on you and it's going to be too late. So I got so much happening now and the first quarter of 2026. Thank you. Some of the comments, love the monologue. Other person said, are you an attorney? Another person stating here how to get more viewers by click on this. Like, I don't know. But I do appreciate all of you. Thank you so much. You all know how to reach me. My email is angelo@angelorobles.com. I've given my number out before, 203-570-2898. And again, the website, simply my name, angelorobles.com. It's membership, masterclasses, and selectively some consulting that I do. And I'm so fortunate to have a global network. This upcoming year will be multiple travels, including, I can't wait to get back to the Middle East. That's going to be a lot of fun. So there's lots going on. Now is the time. You need to take control of it. And there still is, well, like 6 or so weeks to go before we wrap up this year. What are you waiting for? This is the chance for you to get an edge, to get a head start, to come out of the gate in 2026, not falling behind, but ahead. Well, on that note, I am going to enjoy a jacuzzi dip, if it's okay with you, one of my cigars. In my trip to the Cayman Islands, you're allowed to bring 25 Cuban cigars back to the US. I brought like 15, so I am going to enjoy one of them tonight. No, football was last night, as if my international audience could care less about American football. But I'm a New York Giants fan. Don't feel sorry for me. We're going to get a great draft pick. We get our injured folks coming back next year. And next year is the New York Football Giants year. On that note, everyone, enjoy. Reach out to me anytime. Thank you. My pleasure. If we don't connect with another live pre-Thanksgiving, maybe not, here in America, enjoy the holiday time with your families, everyone. Don't bring politics to the table. Bring love. Bring other conversations, even about football that day. And this is coming from me, who loves to bring that kind of stuff to the table. But there's certain times when it's just not applicable. Thank you all, everyone. Pleasure.